So blessings, brother. Brother Blake, I wanted to talk to you because I wanted to learn more about you, brother. We did a conversation with you and I where, you had a lot of questions for me, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast. And I wanted to just ask you some questions as well because, man, your journey is definitely inspiring. Coming from where you were to where you are today, I just would love to know because we actually met each other, formally at the Texas Fruit Festival in Austin, Texas. And, just the way that you approached, it was all respect. I just really appreciated the ways you connect. So I would love to hear, from where you were years ago to now attending these fruit festivals, to talking about health and wellness, to being a teacher, to being a guide, to being someone who is about longevity, is about raw food, is about extending your lifespan, and all sorts of things that you're into today. I would just love to hear, how did this journey start for you?
Thank you so much for asking me that, Jerome, and all respect to you as well. When I saw you were on the roster for the Texas Fruit Festival, and I hadn't even seen you until our paths literally crossed and we were taking that photo together. And I was like, oh my God, it's him. And then that's when I started talking to you. And it seems like that festival was just so divinely orchestrated for so many people, so many like-minded people in this raw food realm, the fruitarian realm, juicing, veganism, fasting, dry fasting, breatharianism. It's all kind of in the same realm. It's just kind of how extreme do you want to be? And the family that I was born into is completely mainstream. And so I was raised very, very typically, probably getting shots as a baby, probably drinking baby formula, um, coming from a very blue collar background where my parents' resources were scarce. So it was very important, especially to my mother, to make sure that I got enough. So she basically overfed me, and this led into um, me becoming very overweight leading into my teenage years. Um, and so there was a certain moment where I had to take things into my own hands, and that moment was, I guess, a rock bottom moment. It was also one of the biggest blessings in my life, where I was experiencing this seasonal weight gain in Minnesota, where in the wintertime I would put on a lot of body fat just from being sedentary. In the summertime, when you're active, and then in the fall, I was playing football, it was very easy for me to stay in shape. But in addition to the winter blues, there was also a lot of turmoil going on in my family, and I think that I was self-medicating with food, and so that led to this weight gain. And there was this one kind of funny story where I think you and I are both kind of like nerds, but we're like cool. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of nerdy people, and like I totally don't think I'm cool at all, but other people think we're cool. But I'm like totally a bookworm nerd. I can't actually wait to read your books, man. That's on my list, and I want to talk about that on our next show, by the way. More about your books and things like that. But so in the summer times, I went to business camp. I didn't go to any like cool sports camp or anything like that. I went to business camp, and I met a bunch of cool friends. And this was, when I was about 14, 15, and girls were starting to become very interesting to me. And so I met a lot of really cute girls, and we had flirtations, and so then we had a reunion for this business camp in the winter time after I had gained all this weight, and these girls that I was so excited to see and I was flirtatious with just 6 7 months back, um they kind of like looked at me in disgust after I had gained all that weight. and I'm like probably nervous laughing because it's still a little bit, like it's an unfortunate thing that happened. But that was like, you know what? I'm not going to live like this anymore. And I immediately started doing cardio. We had one of those Nordic track cardio machines at my house. It was actually in the garage. So I had to wear a jacket, and there was a TV in the garage. And I remember just putting on where it was The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to make it through one Simpsons episode. And then after Simpsons was Seinfeld. And then I was trying to make it through, two episodes. So I was doing an hour on that, that rower thing, or the Nordic track skier. But at the same time, I was researching diets because remember, I'm kind of a bookworm nerd type of person. Although I was trying to be the cool jock guy, it's just, I'm 39 years old. I've fully embraced who I am at this point. But so I would go to Barnes and Noble, and I would because we didn't have like the internet as much and all that other stuff. But and I would read all the diet books there. I would just spend hours just sitting in there after school. And the one that made the most logical sense to me, because I think that I come from a very Christian upbringing, and I respect that faith. I'm very like kind of non-religious. I'm more of like spiritual and energetic. But I really respect that faith because it teaches you a lot of good life lessons. And I think one of the lessons that it got instilled in me at a young age was discernment. Being able to think for yourself and not being so blindly programmed. And granted, we're all programmable to the degree that we're conscious. So it's like when people say I'm awakened or I'm enlightened, I immediately, the red flag goes off because it's a never-ending process of becoming more and more conscious, which is, in my opinion, impossible as a human being. It's just like calculus. We're approaching infinity, but we can never reach it because we're these mortal beings. So the diet book that stood out to me the most was the Alkaline Diet. And it basically talked about processed foods, animal products, food combinations of too many things going on at one time, the condiments that are laden with oils and salts and probably sugars as well, are the foods that are going to cause your body's pH to become more acidic. And when your body's pH level becomes more acidic, then it's much easier for the bacteria, the mold, the parasites to flourish. And they were speaking in these terms of like disease. And now I'm more of the terrain theory person, obviously. I'm not like a disease person. I think that, obviously we need those parasites, we need the bacteria, we need that stuff to clean ourselves up. And the reason why we're having overgrowth of these things is because of what we're eating. We're eating pus and mucus forming foods in the form of animal products and starches and cooked foods. But at the top echelon of the alkaline diet, of course, is the raw vegan diet. Okay, so back to I'm Nordic tracking. Okay, and I'm making my alkaline meals, which at that time was just salads, chicken breast. My aunt got me a rice cooker, and she showed me this trick, or maybe I invented the trick, I don't know. I'll give her as much credit as I can, but where you rinse the rice out and then you pour that starchy water out, and it reduces the glycemic impact of the rice. And that's so I would have chicken, rice, and steamed broccoli. Literally chicken, rice, and broccoli, the bodybuilding, trifecta. And that I was able to lose 100 pounds. And this is granted, we spoke about this briefly to where I'm a larger built person. And I preface that by telling you how my mom kind of like would like to kind of force feed me to make sure that I had enough to eat because she went without and she had to kind of compete with her siblings and for a scarcity of food. So I ballooned up to about 300 pounds, and then I lost 100 pounds over the course of only a few months. So coming into that next football season, I was 200 pounds or less than 200 pounds. And all my teammates were like, bro, you got shredded. Bro, what happened? Oh my God. And I'm like sitting here doing cardio. You know, we would do these cross fields and do all these cardio drills, or we would just, you know, run laps on the track. And I'm like able to keep up with like the outfield backs, you know, like the defensive backs or the, you know, the running backs. And yet I'm this like defensive and offensive lineman. And I'm like, it was like, oh my God, I'm finally not the slow fat dude. Holy crap. So I feel like I redeemed that broken-hearted boy who the girls shunned after seeing my weight gain, and something in my head switched, or in my heart switched, or in my consciousness switched, in my spirit, that I'm never going back. And so that instilled into me this never-ending consistency for 23 years. I ate that exact same alkaline diet. Of course, I had my cheats. I've had a few girlfriends along the way, and we would do a pizza night on the weekends, or we would go to the Asian food buffet. I loved to do that back in the day. You know, what else? A hamburger. Like, I would have my little cheats here and there, but I tried to keep cheat day on the weekends. But during the week, it was the chicken, vegetables, and either baked potatoes or the steamed rice for literally 23 years. And that's how I was able to, I said, I'm never going to get above 200 pounds, you know? So, but I was very inspired by my own transformation. And then I noticed my roommates started just going to the gym. Energy is contagious. You know, my girlfriends would start to eat more consciously and lose weight. And I was like, maybe I should be a personal trainer. So I became personal trainer certified in 2010. I never did it as a career, though. I went the corporate career, and I was, you know, very, and still am very well compensated in corporate America. But there was a stint in 2017 where I left corporate America. I was actually, there was an act of God. I was the unfireable dude, but I got fired. It was just, I got moved to a team, and my manager and I didn't get along, and he did some weird stuff with HR and made up some stuff, and I somehow got fired. I'm like, that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was starting to feel unfulfilled. And I was like, what are my passions? You know, I asked myself that, Jerome. I was like, what are even my passions? I had some savings, and I was, you know, wise with my money and stuff. I'm like, I can take a little hiatus to do something that fulfills my soul. And then I've always been, from that time that I went to business camp as a kid, I've always been entrepreneurial. So I was like, fitness and music, those are my two passions. So I immediately enrolled in a music school here in St. Petersburg. It's the only public college that has a full recording studio on campus. And I learned music industry recording arts and performance for vocals, guitar, bass, drums, ukulele, how to mic a band, how to record, how to use Pro Tools and mix and master an album, and things like that. It was amazing. And at the same time, I had to renew my personal trainer certification, since you need to do your CPEs, your continuing education, to keep it active. So it had lapsed, but I can still say that, you know, as of 2025, I've been a personal trainer for 15 years. I can say that. But not only did I renew my personal trainer certification, I also got certifications in group fitness, and also as a health coach. And the first job that I landed, I was at a crossroads between two job options. And one job, I would be inheriting a full book of business at a private personal training studio from a pregnant girl who couldn't work anymore. But it would be starting at 5 a.m. Monday through Friday until like 1 p.m., like full time, like 10, 11 sessions a day, and making very, very good scratch. And I was like, which one should I go to? Go to that one, or go to this cool gym, you know, with all the people and all the energy and all that other stuff. But at the personal training studio, the lady's name that I would be taking over, her name was Faith.
Okay.
And I took that as a sign, man. I'm one of those people. I look at the synchronicities, Jerome.
I bet.
Maybe you and I are kind of on the same page at that. I try to read the universe just like you would read The Matrix,
Yeah.
in the movie The Matrix. And I was like, I went that direction, and that was the best decision for me. And so I'm doing personal training. I'm doing the music college all at the same time, and then I get hired for this new gym that was built by one of the most popular yoga studios in the country, called Body Electric Yoga. And just because I had a client from a different gym who knew the owners of Body Electric, that I was able to do my audition video with her. And then the owners saw that, oh my God, that's our friend Kaylin. So that was my in, dude, because that's a very impossible job to get. And I somehow landed that job, and I taught kettlebell classes. I taught ice bath. I have a friend who's a Qigong master. He's an Israeli yoga instructor as well. His name is Shahar. And he taught me Qigong, and I subbed his Qigong class when he went back to Israel. And he taught me like the 12 different motions and stuff. I kind of forgot it all, but I love Qigong, man, and I want to get back into it for sure. But just to kind of rewind briefly, that when I was a kid, and I told you that my family was completely mainstream, completely carnivorous and cadaverous, however you want to put it. My mom got a kind of a second job, to support our income. And it was with this guy who's an entrepreneur, a very wealthy software kind of entrepreneur guy, a bit of an older gentleman. And he came to our house one time, and I'm looking at this man, and he was like 60 or something like that. Then I'm looking at my family, and they were like, 40s or something like that. I'm like, this man looks younger and more fit than my family. What's going on? And as a kid, I was like, does not compute. So I'm just watching this man and trying to analyze the situation, what's going on. And, he's having dinner with us, we're chatting and stuff like that. And then he ends up doing a full headstand with his legs up in the air in our living room. I'd never seen anybody do that. And as a kid, I'm like, this man is magic. What's going on here? And it's just a yoga move, dude, and he had this coarse, thick hair too. It was kind of salt and peppery. And my dad's completely bald. No offense. I love you, Dad. But I'm like, I want to be more like this dude and kind of less like this dude in a physical health sense. And so I was like, what are you doing, Stan? And he's like, oh, yeah, that's just yoga. And so it planted the seed to pursue yoga. And I didn't know that seed would ever blossom. But after my weight loss in high school, I wanted to run a marathon. And the only healthy person in my family, really, except for now my cousins, obviously, but at that time, the only person was my aunt, and she was a marathon runner. And I was like, Aunt Nan, I want to run a marathon with you. She was like, all right, you got to train, and you got to be able to run 6 miles straight, and then call me when you do. She probably thought I was full of shit. But I would literally go to the gym, and I would just work my way up. And I ran on the treadmills 6-10-minute miles or something like that. Obviously, it took an hour. And I called my aunt after. I'm like, I'm ready. And so we started training. I ended up only running a half marathon. But during that process, my IT band and my hips and knees and all that stuff, I would feel those miles that we were putting in. And she was like, you should do yoga. And I had never done yoga before, but I knew that my gym, LA Fitness, had yoga classes that I could join. And so I started doing it, and all of a sudden my knee pain goes away, my IT band loosens out, my hips and my posture. And obviously, there's girls in Lululemon spandex and all this stuff like that. And I'm like a young dude and stuff like that. I'm like, I love yoga. And and then I kind of stopped doing it. But then when I get hired at this gym, fast forward and I'm, 30 or whatever. And, I told the owner, she was like, what are some of she was doing an interview with me. before they hired me, she's like, "What are some of your dreams? What are some of your aspirations?" I'm like, I love yoga, and I've always I really respect what you do. I mean, there's even an former NFL player who's taught yoga at the Body Electric. His name is Mike Adams. He actually got shot, and then he healed himself with yoga. He was either shot or stabbed, so don't quote me on that. But I mean, this man's like world famous. He's like a model for Lululemon, and he's like my coworker. I'm like, this is crazy. And so I was telling Caitlin Grady, the owner of this studio, and I was like, yeah, I would love to be a yoga instructor. So then I'm teaching and going through the flow and juggling all these clients and going to school for music. And granted, I'm like a corporate dude. You know what I mean? I like ran teams, and I like was in charge of, budgets and deadlines and stuff. So here I am, a personal trainer and going to music school. I'm like, who am I? And I used to tell one of my friends, Skylar, I was like, dude, I feel like I'm on some sort of spiritual journey. Like that corporate version of me needed to die. And, this has just been an amazing transformation. I felt like how, when Dorothy went to Oz and in the movie, and then now everything's in color. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how I felt. But somewhere along the line, Caitlin got a hold of me, and she was like, Blake, there's a yoga teacher training session coming up, and it was full, but then one of the ladies can't attend, and there's actually no refund policy. But this lady was totally cool with that. She knew that ahead of time. So she wanted to donate her spot in the yoga teacher training. And would you like to take it, since I know that it was your dream to always become a yoga instructor? So I said, F yeah. And, we were talking about this on our podcast, Jerome, how the universe will meet you halfway. And you put that intention out there, and so I become a certified yoga instructor, and so now I'm teaching the fitness, I'm teaching the yoga. I ended up teaching at a climbing gym called Vertical Ventures here in St. Petersburg. Just an amazing experience. But then COVID happened. I'm flying high. COVID happened. We have to wear the masks. We have, how am I supposed to teach breath work and we're wearing the masks? It's just ridiculous. Ludicrous. And so a lot of my clients, though, started going remote. And I thought to myself, back in my corporate days, there was literally one day where I worked remotely. It was a beta test that they were doing to test the security of the network and things like that. That was the best day of my entire work life. I'm sitting here on my leather couch with my big screen TV with my, Jack Russell and my laptop plugged into the TV, music on, girlfriends at work, got the whole house to myself. I'm like, I'm getting paid to do this. This is amazing. Because when you're a fit, healthy individual and you're surrounded by sick people who are overweight and stuff, you're the odd duck in the corporate environment typically. And sometimes there can be some weird vibes there, and so I didn't really like the social atmosphere of climbing the ladder and climbing on top of other people, the crab in the bucket thing. So I was like, but I can work remotely. So I thought to myself, if I get a job working remotely and was able to monetize time, then I think that would satisfy my entrepreneurial desires. And I also had some desires to travel around and try the digital nomad thing, which I subsequently ended up doing a little bit in Colombia for 6 weeks, and it was amazing. But what I did not expect is, well, actually, I kind of did expect this. I confided in one of my friends who's a kinesiologist, an acupuncturist, a martial artist. I told you my friend Shahar, the Qigong guy, they were sparring, and Shahar actually broke his leg. Because they're tough, man. But then Dr. Lance healed his own leg miraculously quickly. I mean, these people and I met all these people through the Body Electric. So that was an amazing connections that I had there. But I confided in Dr. Lance. I was like, I love teaching fitness. I love teaching yoga. I love this realm, but I just kind of feel like I want to draw inwards and discover myself more because I'm giving myself to all my clients, and I feel like there's some development that I want to, give to myself now. And he's like, there's actually a term, in Eastern philosophy called, for the drawing inward. I think it was called Nadon or something like that. I forget exactly what it was called. And so I was like, maybe I will give that a try. So I get a remote job and I start just exploring. I explore the Hermetic principles. I explore natural law. I explore some of the fringe knowledge, that is more considered esoteric, or even considered occult. And that eventually led me to do all this shadow work on myself. And I dug up some of those skeletons from the past that I had spoken to you guys earlier, and made peace with all of that, made peace and dropped the blame and dropped the shame. Took some trips back home and just hugged and loved on my family and just let all the stuff go. And in that process, I came across Dan McDonald. And we all know Dan as the Life Regenerator. He's on YouTube. He does the juicing and he does the raw foods. And so I never expected in my wildest imagination to be a raw foodist, to be a juicer, to be a raw vegan, to be doing all this fasting. It was actually the fasting that led me that really ultimately led me to this lifestyle. In 2023, I started doing some fasting. Granted, I was taking electrolytes and supplements and tea. I just didn't know at that time that I should have probably just done water and that's it. But that was in 2023, and then in 2024, I made friends with this Indian family, and they're vegetarian. So that ties in my yoga knowledge. So I went deeper into my yogic studies, and I saw the sattvic diet, where in the Bhagavad Gita they talk about the 3 different levels of food. You have the tamasic, the rajasic, and the sattvic. And the sattvic is the high vibrational food that's going to keep you in that high vibe state. And of course, again, it mimics and mirrors the upper echelon of the alkaline diet and the raw food diet. So I'm like, I want to lean more towards that. I started eliminating meat and replacing that with eggs, and then eating more simple food combinations. And then, that's when I found Dan McDonald. So I bought a juicer and I bought the jars at the end of 2024 after I've been tapering down towards raw. And I was like, all right, when 2025 starts, I'm going to go raw. And then maybe after my birthday, which was in February, maybe after my birthday, I'll do one of these juice fasts that they talk about, But fate would just happen to convene again. I went raw. And then at the end of this past January, I ended up injuring myself in a Bikram yoga studio. And I'm a very robust, I've never had any injuries really in my entire life. God bless. It's one of my blessings. I'm robustly durable. But I somehow tweaked my ankle in that class. And I was like, okay, well, fasting, of all the binge watching that I was doing of, all the famous influencers like Jerome Shaw, Lauren Lockman, Dan McDonald, all these people, Dr. Morse, fasting allows your body to heal. So I'm like, I'll just start my juice fast now. So I jumped right in, even though it was sooner than I thought. I did a 3-week juice fast, and I knew about mucoid plaque. I never expected it to happen to me, but at around 2 weeks, I went to the bathroom for the first time, after the first week of my juice fast that I was doing. And I looked down, I'm like, that's not what I think it is. And I kind of examined it, not to give you guys too much details, but of course it was the famed mucoid plaque.
Ah.
And then for the whole entire last week of my 3-week fast, technically 23 days, because 23 is my lucky number, but I digress. Every day, mucoid plaque. And if anybody out on the internet says that mucoid plaque is a myth, then I have photographic evidence with timestamps and everything like that to show you that it's not a myth. Even though I was eating clean for 23 years, those little cheats, the little rices, the little starches, it's not human food, guys. It's not for human consumption. It should say on the box of pizza, or it should say on the meat, not for human consumption. Eat at your own risk, because it gets stuck inside of you. And that blew my mind open, because I'm coming into this from a pedigree of discipline, as football player, wrestler, somebody who's been so consistent for such a long time. I'm from Minnesota. You couldn't even really go anywhere unless you shoveled your way out, and we're just toughly kind of gritty people. And if you look at some of the some of the crazy breatharians in Russia, if you've ever looked at the Fruitarian Paradise YouTube channel, it reminds me kind of my family. It's a similar climate, and they just go out there in their bare feet and they just do crazy stuff. And that's kind of was my upbringing. But that switch went off in my brain when I saw the mucoid plaque, Jerome. And it was the same switch that went off when I was a kid. And I decided now I'm going to take my health and fitness into my own hands after my heart was broken, being shunned by my friends and these girls that I was just flirting with 6 months prior, after, they saw me with all this weight gain and barely recognized me. And so since then, I stayed on the raw journey. I was eating too much nuts in the beginning. And because my body hadn't fully adapted to the living power of the raw foods yet, because I had just been subsisting off of the rice and the eggs, I became kind of skinny fat, you could say. And you can even look, for anybody listening or for yourself, you can even look back on my channel. Sometimes we don't know our own transformation, but other people notice. But I noticed my own transformation. I was looking at videos from earlier this year, and this is even a few months ago. I'm like, you can't see any sort of definition as much in my arms. And it's like, this is how I looked at probably the peak of my personal training career, when I was doing 10 workouts a day, kind of, just ridiculous exercising, but I burnt out my adrenals. But anyway, I then did another juice fast. I was called to do another juice fast. This time I did 6 weeks. And I was originally going to do 40 days because that's the famed number, 40 days, 40 nights. But I did the math, and 42 days is 1,008 hours. So that's an auspicious number in yoga, the 1, the 0, and the 8. It's the 1 and the 0, the binary code, the masculine, feminine principle, and then the 8 is infinity. So 108, 1,008. I recently did a 7.5-day water fast, which I'll talk about. 7.5 days is 180 hours. So there's the 1, the 8, and the 0 again. So I'm a little, super, whatever you call it. I don't know. And again, mucoid plaque the entire last week and a half.
Crazy. And you'd already released it before.
Yes.
And you released it again.
Yes. Photographic evidence. Anybody calling BS, hit me up in the DMs, and I will send you some nasty pictures.
Wow.
At the end of the first 3-week fast, I started eating again because it was my birthday a couple days later, and I wanted to have some birthday, make my guacamole with my cucumber chips and have some fruits and stuff. I was, I had a hotel on the beach, and I wanted to just enjoy and whatever. So but I knew there was more in there at that point, though. I knew there was more in there. Wow. But you start eating, and it stops that process.
Yeah.
Just like they say, man. So for everybody listening, you're listening to these influencers, and we're not just saying stuff to just say stuff. This is real stuff, you guys. You kick yourself out of the detox process when you start eating, especially the heavier you start eating, when you start eating into the vegetable realm. If you stay on fruits, maybe I would have kept releasing. But
You know, it's crazy. Like when you're saying that, and thank you, Brother Blake. Like, thank you just for this testimony. Like, thank you just for, for letting people know your story and your journey and your learnings. And like you said, the spirit of discerning, the discernment that you have, brother, not everybody turns around and is brave enough to turn around and look at the toilet, to look at the bowl of just all the stuff that they're purging and what is emerging from that process. So when you turned around that first time, when you said it took around 2 weeks, so it was around 14 days for it to release, for it to detach and untether from your body, from your large and small intestine, from the colon. When you looked at it and you said, that's not what I think it is. Like, is that what I think it is? For somebody who's never seen what mucoid plaque is and like what it looks like and how different it is from a regular bowel movement, I know could you just describe like why is it so different from what we just pass every day, for where people think that what they put in their body comes out the same day? Like, why is it so different?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that is what people think too. They think that, oh, I ate this food and then I do a bowel movement 6 hours later, 8 hours later. Oh, there goes the food I ate. No, it's not. That's the food that you ate 48 hours ago. And if you want to test that, eat some corn, and then you'll be able to know which meal is which. All right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but when I passed the mucoid plaque, I hadn't had a bowel movement for that. After the first couple days of my fast, and then for that remaining time leading up until about day 15 or so it was. And so I had a bowel movement, and I just I felt it building, and I was like, okay, I think it's going to be watery. I think it's probably going to be watery. But so I have the bowel movement. And then I looked down in the toilet, and it wasn't watery, and it looked dark, it looked squiggly, and it looked like a snake, like a long, slender.
Yeah, people talk about, like, in esoteric, they call it the black serpent, the serpent. Yeah. Like when it comes out, it's crazy. Yeah.
And that's what it is. And I'm doing a book club right now with Seth Balin. I think he's a mutual friend of ours. And his Instagram is Radical Health Zine. And he's also got, if you look in his links, go to that one, and he's got an amazing fruit page as well, where he has all these pictures of fruit and stuff. And I'm rereading the Essene Gospel of Peace. Nice. And that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls were dated around 0 AD, around that in that first couple hundred years of. They can't really date it correctly, but so this is thousands of years that we've known about the serpent, Jerome. They knew about it then. They called it Beelzebub in that book, and that's another word for Satan. So, how literal is how we want to take that is our own choice. But in the Hindu culture, death draws energy to it. Yeah. They leave salt on their windowsills when they're cleaning the house, and if they have to kill an insect or anything in the house, they immediately keep it out of the house. They're cleaning, and they clean all the dust. Any sort of debris or dust or uncleanliness brings bad energy towards it. And if you just look in nature, what happens to a roadkill on the side of the street? It's going to start stinking and festering, and maggots are going to start growing. Oh, that's so bad, that's so evil, and everything like that. Well, not really. That's just Mother Nature returning that animal back to the soil. And that's just Mother Nature doing its job. Like I said earlier, when we eat this food that's not fit for human consumption, that's why we have that festering inside of us. That's why the same thing that's happening to the roadkill is happening inside your body. There's a foreign substance in your body that requires your body to grow an overgrowth of this bacteria that is suitable to break down and putrefy and rancidify and ferment these foods that are never meant to be inside our body, because if they didn't do that, we would die. Okay? So we would die instantly if they didn't do that. We would die instantly of toxicity and toxemia. But we're dying a slow death by doing that to ourselves, because it's not just those things being inside us and the parasites and all that other stuff, and it's their own excrements that are making more. Where do they go to the bathroom? Inside of us.
Exactly.
And our lymphatic system is so backed up and so destroyed. That's a whole nother podcast, man, to talk about the lymphatic system. So I'll kind of I won't digress. I'll go back to the mucoid plaque to really answer your question. To be entirely honest with you I got a freaking spatula, man, because I saw the pictures of the mucoid plaque hanging off of people's spatulas, rubbery and intact, defying gravity.
Yeah.
A piece of normal doo-doo should not do that.
It wouldn't do that. It wouldn't do that. Yeah. Exactly.
And what does it do? And when I try it, and what do I have a picture of? That exact same thing happening.
Yeah.
It's rubber, and it smells like death. It doesn't smell like, poop. Kind of stinks, of course. Not ours really anymore, to be entirely honest with you. If you're a fruitarian, it doesn't have a smell to it, guys. So if I'm walking around like this, it's because my poo doesn't stink, literally. But it's hanging off the end of my spatula. It's rubbery, and it smells like death.
Crazy.
And what did we just talk about with the roadkill example? That's happening inside pretty much anybody. Now, I've had some people talk to me, and I wanted to ask you about this, Jerome. I've had some people do long juice fasts. I've had some people talk to me. They've never taken the plunge to do a long fast. They've never released the mucoid plaque. They think that they probably don't have any inside of them. And I'm thinking to myself, I ate pretty clean for 23 years, but I had my gluttonous moments. I had my times, like I said, the Asian buffet, going to Red Robin and just crushing fries, like I had my time. So it made sense for me to have 2 juice fasts worth of, a week each of straight mucoid plaque every day, sometimes twice a day.
Yeah.
And by the way, at the end of the 6 weeks fast, the 42-day fast, juice fast, I felt that I got all of the mucoid plaque out, because it was starting to give me, it just not as much was coming out, and eventually none came out. And then I felt like it was starting to get deeper into my tissues. And we can kind of segue to that maybe now, or maybe in another live or another video. And that's what led me to my water fast. And that was next level. Next level.
Okay.
But, do you think that everybody has this stuff inside them? Because I think they do. And I think that if they didn't release it, or if they think that they're already clean, that they just didn't go deep enough in their fast. But I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I feel like, speaking for myself, I knew I did, because all the stuff that I was eating, like it has to go somewhere. And like you said, when whatever we put in, less is coming out each time. It's not like it's just all of it is coming out every time we put it in. It's like less and less. And when you're talking about, the desiccating, putrefying flesh, the flesh that just rots and just stays and decays in the body. I mean, I'm talking for years I was eating all sorts of stuff. For years I was eating rotisseries. For years I was eating wings and ground beef and ground this and ground that. And like all of that stuff like was just sitting there, and I was just under the programming, or under the illusion, or just under hypnosis. I don't know what I was under, but I was under the illusion that it was just coming out, and it wasn't coming out, staying in there. So I definitely, I've not only by myself, but I've seen so much evidence with people like yourself, brave individuals with the spatula, with the spatula in taking the spatula and showing like these ropes, and just, I remember when she took her gloves, she had on rubber gloves, and she was like, I've been a vegan for, she was like, I've been a vegan for like 6, 7 years, and there's probably meat in this. You know, there's probably animals in it. Like she's squishing this stuff from like years ago. This is probably like from decades. And another woman was like, yeah, this is from, you know, I haven't ate flesh for 10 years. And she's like, this is from McDonald's when I was younger, you know? There was
Right.
another lady who she hadn't taken, she knew it was 2 decades old because as soon as she released the plaque, she stopped taking something that she was taking medication for 20 years ago, stopped when the plaque released. So she knew that it was at least 2 decades old sitting in her body. And people will talk about it's like almost like interstitial. You know, we're talking about the
Yes.
issues inside the tissues. It's like interstitial matter that almost becomes connected with your body. It's almost like a part of, it almost becomes a part of you at a certain point. And it's so hard to, that's why it's so hard to release and let go. And people are talking about it took 14 days, it took 20 days, it took 30 days, you know, to let go. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's honestly true. I think that everybody has it in them, and I think that maybe for some people they didn't go deep enough and they didn't go hard enough, and they need to persevere. And if they didn't have success in releasing this matter after a 14-day juice fast or even a 30-day juice fast, one of my friends, um, you know, as much as I hate to have anybody try like supplementation or whatever, I know that Shane Sterling talks about the importance of using enzymes,
Mm.
and then he'll use bentonite clay and psyllium husks, and so that's what I did in
Mhm.
my juice fast, and I didn't want to do that, and so but I was having liquid stools, kind of like I alluded to, and I was about to give up. And I was like, okay, if I try this psyllium husk stuff, at least maybe it'll stop. Like, because I can't even go in public unless I'm close to a bathroom. This is terrible. I'm a grown man. I feel like I should be wearing a diaper. This is ridiculous. Um, but then the liquid stool stopped, and then the next day, that's when the mucoid plaque started coming out. So I'm not a proponent of any sort of supplement or any sort of enzymes, especially. Um, I do I do still experiment with herbs,
Mhm.
and I'm still kind of playing around with herbs, you know, like how Dr. Morse talks about. He's probably one of my favorite influencers in this space, and everybody should go binge watch his stuff. But maybe that's a solution, Jerome, you know, for the people that are having trouble eliminating this stuff, because I honestly think that everybody probably has some. Because if you were raised in the modern era with
Yeah.
starches and animal products, it's unless you have some sort of amazing constitution where your body just like chunks it out and your body just has such amazing enzyme production on its own and amazing adrenal function and amazing lymphatic flow, then I think that we would. You said something very poignant earlier when you were like, the mucoid plaque is a part of you. And
Mm.
that goes back to what we were talking about with the energy that is drawn into the decaying matter.
Mhm.
It dulls your vibration if you want to think about it in a linear realm. If you're on a scale of 0 to 1,000, let's say, you know, if you are vegan and you're doing the yoga and the breath work, or at least not even vegan, but very happy and healthy and you know, a robust life where you're giving and you're moving your body and everything like I was for 23 years, you know, what was my vibration? Like maybe it was pretty high, maybe a
Mhm.
700, I don't know, 600, let's say a 600.
Mhm.
I thought that I was pretty much maxed out. And then I
Yeah.
told you I was drawn to try fasting. I tried fasting. I never released any mucoid plaque. Remember, I told you I was taking supplements, so it wasn't like a true fast. But it was only until I did this mucoid plaque out that I felt like my whole identity shifted, and I quantum leaped past my old self.
Wow.
And now I feel like I think the reason why I was telling you that I was this bookworm kid and I'm like a nerd on the inside is that I feel like I've gone back to the authentic me, that little boy who was in his room reading books, reading The Lord of the Rings, reading the Chronicles of Narnia at like a ridiculously young age. And I'm like this super smart kid, but I wasn't the cool kid because all the jocks were the cool kids. So of course I wanted to be like them, but now I've returned back to myself. And I'm binge reading. I have a library right here, but I'm binge reading Shelton. I'm binge reading Eric. We're rereading the Scene Gospel of Peace. I've already finished it, but I'm rereading it again. Hilton Hotima, the Return to the Braden Eden. We were talking online about that. I've read that book, and so it's like I'm chunking all of this natural hygienic knowledge, and I'm only today is October 7th. I'm only a little bit over 9 months into my raw journey. Where is this going to progress now? I feel like I have a whole new lease on life at 39 years old. But I had this session after I hurt my ankle. Remember I told you I hurt my ankle. That's what prompted my first juice fast. When I hurt my ankle, I saw that kinesiologist, Dr. Lance, who healed his own broken leg in like a matter of a couple weeks. Ridiculous. And he did some acupuncture on me, and he worked on my ankle and stuff like that. And he was the guy who kind of gave me, some advice that it's okay to draw inward and work on yourself. And that's when I got my remote job and stuff like that, so he's been a big mentor to me, Dr. Lance. And so when I saw him for my ankle, he was like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want? And, I was like, I'm 39. Well, at the time I was 38. I was like, I'm about to be 39 and I'm coming into my 40s. And I want to have the most epic generation of my life, the most epic decade of my life. And I want to be healthy and fit and strong and youthful. And he's like, well, what does that look like? And in the back of my head, I was like, yeah, I want to teach this natural hygiene stuff. I want to teach the raw foods. And I want to practice it myself, but I couldn't really articulate that to him. And he was like, okay, well, next time you come back, have an answer for me. And I haven't been back yet, but I was just thinking the other day, I'm going to go back and I'm going to see him and get some more acupuncture and have him work on my neck. And now I have an answer for him. But that manifestation, that intention that he led me to make back in February has come full circle. And now that I'm at this level, the sky is the limit. So to answer your very first question in sort of a different way, like what led me into this raw realm and what really kind of like, pushed me over the edge to give this a try is that I refuse to admit that I was aging, but in entire honesty, my workouts in the gym, I was able to do them, but it was harder. I was able to still hit PRs and still hit running PRs and bench and squat and all that other stuff, of course. But it was getting harder to stay lean, and it was taking more energy out of me to where I'd be like working. I'm at my desk here. This is where I do my remote job that I've been doing for 3 years now. And it's just like I'm just tired. I just want to just sit there and do nothing. I'm like, I'm not getting older, And so I'm watching this Dan McDonald, and he's like the life regenerator and stuff like that. And you do the juice fasting, you release the mucoid plaque, you stay on the raw foods, and it's like the fountain of youth. And I'm like, I somehow manifested this knowledge. This knowledge escaped me for 23 years because I thought I had the game figured out. And I kind of did with the alkaline diet, like we talked about, but it wasn't I never went the full way. But now I can honestly say, especially after this last water fast that I did right before the Texas Fruit Festival, and when you met me, I was going through a terrible healing crisis. I was trying to hide it. And we'll talk more about that on our next one, maybe. Okay. The water fast and the healing crisis stuff, because that's very interesting stuff that I was able to experience that once again. All these things, healing crises, mucoid plaque, fasting, raw food transition foods, food preparations, food combining, all this stuff I've experienced, all of this in just such a short amount of time. But I feel like I like you did, you put the work in towards your manifestation, and then the universe reaches back in kind and sometimes tenfold. And I've literally kind of like reset my physiology back to probably my former peak years when I was like, early 30s. Yeah. And that's how I look. And I'm looking at photos, and it's like, that's how I look now. Wow. And so what's to say that I can't keep this momentum going and even make more progress into my 50s and maintain this going into my 60s? There's a lot of people out there who have been doing this for a long time. We met Don Bennett, we met John Kohler, we met all these people, but I think there's a new wave of us coming up, of course, in the younger generations that are combining more of, like we talked about on our show together, Jerome, the more of the spiritual and also the more of the mental, and combining the fitness and the qigong and the energy work with the raw diet, with the fasting, and to see how far we can take this longevity thing. You know what I'm saying? And how long that we can live healthily and live in true reflection of what humans were actually meant to do. Is it 120 years? Like, how far can we take this? Like, it's an amazing, I feel so inspired to be learning from you and learning from all these other people, and to just apply it in my own life. And I want to just take my old sort of desire for coaching and helping people that I was doing as a personal trainer, but now more so as a raw food health coach. And I have my coaching platform. It's called rawfood.lifestyle. Nice. And I have a community. It's the same thing. It's called Raw Food Lifestyle. You can join the community. You can get one-on-one coaching with me. And to start out the year in 2026, we'll be doing a group 3-week juice fast together. So people can join that. And I'm going to have some Black Friday deals coming up soon too. So I'm finally on the path towards the goals that I've had since I was a little kid. And it's honestly thanks to this raw food journey. And so thank you for listening. I've just really just talked this whole time, probably for like an hour, but